Hello there. Welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week discussing topical issues with interesting guests, and this week one of Oklahoma's true impact players.
Yes, we've had a series, as our regular viewers know. We call it Oklahoma's Impact Players, and we try to have on individuals who have really made a difference in Oklahoma, and not necessarily in the political arena. We don't count the elected officials in that category, but people in the business, education, and other areas that do have an impact on how life is in Oklahoma. And today we have Vince Orza. Excuse me, we could address Vince as dean, professor, anchor, or boss. And any of those four titles he'd fit. And he has a fascinating story to tell. He has written a fascinating book, which I have a copy of and have scanned, but cannot tell you I've really read, but I certainly intend to. But we're very pleased to have him join us this week, and we'll hear from him, I'm sure.
All right, we'll be right back with Vince Orza on today's edition of The Verdict.
For one Oklahoma-based company, success didn't happen overnight. Initially, the days were long, 80-hour weeks common. As we grew, we wanted to share our success, and the ideals of corporate and civic responsibility found a welcome home. Today, we're the largest investor in the Sooner State and a source for exciting, new, high-quality jobs. We're Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Hi, I'm Court Diffie. With all of the change that has taken place in the car industry in the past decade here in Oklahoma, it's hard to find a family-run business anymore. One of the things that makes us different, that if you visit any one of our 3 locations, you're going to find one of our family members there ready to help you. Does that really make any difference? We really believe it does. So I invite you to come out and experience the Diffie family difference and decide for yourself.
Hockey is back, and it's on the Cox Channel. The Oklahoma Ford Turnpike Series features the Oilers and the Blazers exclusively on the Cox Channel. Whether it's in Tulsa or Oklahoma City, you're covered with the Cox Channel.
Cheers, Buddy Christmas, the rookie Jared Barraza.
Nobody does more sports. Nobody does it better. The Cox Channel is home to the Oklahoma Ford Turnpike Series. Game on.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
We are pleased, as I said in the opening segment, to have with us today Vince Orza, one of Oklahoma's impact players. Vince is currently the dean of the Meinders School of Business at Oklahoma City University. He took his bachelor's and master's degrees from Oklahoma City University and his PhD from the University of Oklahoma in education. He is the creator of the Garfield's restaurant chain, the founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of that restaurant chain. It's called Eateries Inc., has some other brands associated with it. He is a 2-time candidate for governor. He's a former television anchor, was a tenured professor at Oklahoma City University, University of Central Oklahoma in marketing, and as I said, is now the dean of the Meinders School of Business at OCU. It's his first visit on The Verdict, and Vince, we're sure pleased to have you.
Thank you, my pleasure. I always tell people when I hear myself introduced, it sounds like I can't hold a job.
How'd you wind up here? Why is Vince Orza in Oklahoma City?
Because of Oklahoma City University. They came and found me at Lakeland High School in Shrub Oak, New York, where I was president of my senior class. I was one of those kinds of kids who was told by his guidance counselor, you weren't college material, you wouldn't get in, if you did, you wouldn't make it. But because I was president of my class, OCU offered me a small scholarship. I didn't know where Oklahoma was. And I remember going to tell my mom and dad, I'm going to go to college in Oklahoma. My father said, where? And I drove out here all by myself and never left. It has been home to me since 1969.
Well, you're a business owner, educator, former TV anchor. How did these careers evolve?
You know, I think that's probably one of the reasons I really wanted to be governor. I have told people over and over again, everything I've ever wanted in my life has happened to me in Oklahoma. I came here to go to college. I never left. I wanted to be a teacher because of a couple of great teachers that made a difference in my life. And I always thought, you know, I'd like to do the same thing for some kids that a couple of teachers did for me. When I started teaching at Del City High School right after I graduated from OCU. I was 20. Most of the kids I was teaching were about the same age as me. And I instantly went back for my master's at OCU and finished that and thought I'd go back east to teach. And then I decided to go to graduate school again. And so by the time I had been here a couple of years, it was home. I wrote a letter to Danny Williams, who was doing Danny's Day in those days as well as radio, and said, you don't talk about money on your television show. And Danny's Day was every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And they put me on the air. And so it's live television, and I've always told people I'm an Italian. The way Italians get on television back east is to do one of two things. You either kill somebody or get killed, and you're on television. I said I wasn't dead and I wasn't under arrest, and I was on television. At the end of the first segment with Danny, I stood in the wings and watched the show, and when the show was over, he walked up and said, could you talk about something else next week? And I said, sure. I came back every week, sometimes twice, 3 times a week, and Danny taught me television. And a year went by, and Lola Hall called me from Channel 9 and said, hey, we're doing a program over here in the morning called Early Beat News, and we need someone to talk about business and economics. Can you do it? And I said, sure. Now, Channel 4 didn't pay me a dime, and I didn't ask for any money. And Lola says to me, we don't pay much here at Channel 9, and I'm thinking, they don't pay anything at Channel 4. How bad could it be? And so I made a few bucks a month, a couple $100 a month over at Channel 9, doing Channel 4 during the day, Channel 9 in the morning. And then about a year went by again, and I went to Channel 4 and said, you know, they pay me at 9. And 4 said, to do what? They didn't even know I was on the air. And I'm on the news over there. They said, well, you can't be on the news with them. You're on the news with us. And I said, well, they pay. Now I'm getting a little cocky as I get older. And so they made me quit at 9. They started paying me a couple of $100 a month. And then a year went by, and Tom Kirby, the then news director, brand new at Channel 5, called me one day and said, I'd like you to be on the news over here. And I went to Channel 5 and spent 10 or 12 years there, while I was still teaching full-time at the University of Central Oklahoma.
And Mick was there, I think.
Mick and I were colleagues at Channel 5 for a long time.
Now, where do you want to jump ahead next in the bio? We could stop at so many points along the way, but it's a 30-minute show, and I want to hit the highlights that you want to talk about. Talk about your television career and being a weekend news anchor and things like that, and how did that prepare you for what you did later, and how did what you learned in school prepare you for being on TV? Because you were not a journalism major. You made it the hard way.
You know, but I suspect, like you, Mick, I love doing television. It's exciting. You're on the beginning of the story rather than on the end. You know, you're telling people what happened rather than having somebody tell you. And I didn't know the first thing about television, but I've learned in life you have nothing to lose by trying. I was no more prepared to be a teacher than anybody else, but I wanted to be a teacher. I certainly didn't have any idea we'd own restaurants all across the country, but I wanted to get in the restaurant business to prove somebody wrong. I went to college to prove somebody wrong. And I was told in television, you know, you're not the right sound, you're not the right look, you wear a double-breasted suit, you wear a pinky ring, you're a Yankee, you talk too fast. And, you know, if you listen to all the things that people tell you what not to do in life, you wouldn't do anything. So, you know, here I write a letter and I wind up on television, and then all of a sudden the other station calls me, and then the other station calls me. And the best part was, again, I was probably making about $2,000 a year working at Channel 4. And when Tom Kirby called me from Channel 5, he said, now, we don't want to get in a bidding war. What do they pay you at 4? And I said, what do you guys pay? It doesn't make any difference what I'm currently making. And he said, well, we can pay $18,000 for 3 shows a week. I said, let me think about it. This is as cocky as could be. And he said, no, I need an answer today. What does it take to make a deal today? Otherwise, I'm not interested. I said, what's your best price? He said, $25,000. Sold. You got a deal. It was more than I was making at the university. And, you know, it's one of those times where I was in the right place at the right time, and I was willing to take a risk. And the state's the perfect place for people willing to take a risk. We're a small state. There's not a lot of competition. And that's why I wanted to be governor, was to say, look what happened to me. I'm just an average guy who works hard. What could happen to you if you're brilliant, if you really have the resources to succeed in life?
Okay, let's talk about your restaurant business and how you got involved in that and what you've learned through the years.
While I was doing the news at night and teaching at the university full-time during the day, I also owned an ad agency that I started. And I took on clients that everybody said you couldn't make any money from. Well, if you have enough of them, a little bit from a lot of people, you know, you make a decent living at it. And one of my clients was Chi-Chi's Mexican Restaurants. And they were in their beginning stages. And I worked in television and I knew a little bit about TV, and I convinced them to advertise on television, and that's how I got the account. And after representing them for about a year or two, along with 50 other small accounts, the Chi-Chi's people offered me a job as their VP of marketing. And I didn't quit at Channel 5, and I didn't quit at the university, or I didn't sell my agency. I just did all 4 things at once. And you know, from there, I stayed about a year and a half. They treated me very well. They paid me a lot of money, and I learned a great deal. But I also learned that I didn't like the way they did business. I thought they were going to bankrupt the place. And I walked in one day and told the chairman that, and he blew up and threw me out of his office. And an hour later came down and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't believe you'd said that to me." And I said, "That's what you pay me for. I mean, if you don't want to know, you shouldn't pay me." And I said, "I'm going to quit and I'm going to go off and do my own deal." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to go start a restaurant company just to prove you wrong." And I did. I left a few months later. We started Garfield's in November of 1984. And today we operate 75 or 80 restaurants coast to coast. We do about $125 million worth of business. I got 4,000 employees.
You got some other brands besides Garfield's.
Yeah, we own the Pepperoni Grill. We've always been very proud of the Pepperoni Grill in Penn Square. And we sold, and we just bought back the Garcia's chain of Mexican restaurants. And so we have restaurants in Arizona, California, and the Western Coast from Garcia's.
From these various careers, do you get satisfaction from each one of them, or does one hit the top as the most satisfying? You know, life's too short to do something that displeases you. I really enjoy all the things I do, but because I have an attention span that's that long. That's the reason I like doing 2 or 3 things. One thing would bore me. I loved doing television. I found it exciting. I found it rewarding. But I always treated it just like my classroom. I saw it as exactly the same job as being Vince Orza professor of marketing. My job was to teach people something about what had happened that day. And I just said television is a bigger classroom. And the company was the same way. My job was to surround myself with a bunch of kids who were just like me, probably had been told they weren't going to make it in life, and kind of pave the way for them to do well. And a lot of them still work for me. Literally, the very first person I hired 23 years later still works for me, and he's now president of our company. Now the dean of the OCU Business School, the Meinders School of Business. We'll find out more about that in just a moment. We're visiting with Vince Orza, one of Oklahoma's impact players, and you're watching The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leaving it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go for it. Wiggins in to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
R.S.M. McGladry. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. R.S.M. McGladry. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
You need this one to get satellite HD. This one's your DVR. This one's for local channels. This one's...
What are we supposed to do with all this stuff?
Got you covered. Oh, by the way, that old satellite stuff makes a great end table.
That doesn't look so bad, right, honey?
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the latest entertainment without the hassles from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Our guest this week is Vince Orza. He's one of Oklahoma's impact players. You're the new dean, I say new, it's fairly new, at the OCU School of Business. How did all that take place?
I've been a trustee at OCU for, 10 or 15 years. Having been a student there several years ago, Herman Meinders, who ironically happens to be a fraternity brother of mine, called me and said, "We want you to be on the board of trustees," which again was a great honor for me. And so I've done that for years, and the dean resigned, and Tom McDaniel, the president, called me and said, "I'd like you to be dean of the School of Business." And it was at a point in my life where I said, "You bet." it was a way to give back to the university for what they had done for me, and I was honored. And I've been there now 3 or 4 months, and I really enjoy it. It's very rewarding to be part of that community.
Well, you've got a beautiful new building, relatively new building.
Gift of Herman Meinders.
Gift of Herman Meinders. What are your major challenges now that you've kind of settled in for the business school? What do you see as your greatest challenges as dean?
Kent, we're 100 years old as a university, and when I got to Oklahoma City to go to college there in 1969, it was considered Oklahoma City's university. And over the years, it kind of lost some of that with OCC and OU and everything else. Under Tom McDaniel, it's again becoming the community's university, the business community's university for sure. And my goal is to really elevate the visibility of the Meinders School of Business. We want more students. We're growing. We've had a pretty good year. It's been a great year for us. But I think we really have an opportunity to provide a different kind of education than what you get at a large school. Our average class size is 14. It's 200 or 300 at OU and sometimes 100 or more at UCO and places like that. So it's a very personalized education. And what I want to do is have as many kids go to school there as possible. And invariably I hear, well, it's awfully expensive. Well, it is if you're paying. But virtually all of the kids going to OCU are on some sort of scholarship or financial aid. Nobody pays window sticker price for a car, and you really don't pay window sticker price for a university. So I want people to know it's not what you think the price is, but what it really does cost to go to school there, and the benefit for being there.
You've experienced being CEO of a publicly traded company, now dean of a law school. What are the differences in those two leadership jobs? Yeah.
Well, very
business
different.
School. I'm sorry, business school. Did I say law school? Business
yeah,
school.
One's bad enough without two of them. Very different, because in business, you get paid to lead and make decisions. And you bring yourself around people asking for advice and counsel, but somebody has to decide, here's what we're going to do. And that's how I built my company. In a school of business or in a university community, you're surrounded by brilliant people, well-educated people. But quite often they study, they think, they plan, they have committees for everything, and the decision-making process gets either lost or watered down because you're not paid to decide, you're paid to teach. And in the business community, you're paid to teach and decide. Someone's got to make something happen. So it's a little more frustrating in that regard because you seek counsel, but the actual decision-making process is much slower than it is in the private sector.
You've expressed a lot of opinions about business and how government regulation deals with business through the years. Forget being governor, if you were king, if you could just make an edict and that's how it was going to be in Oklahoma, what changes would you make in Oklahoma's current system as far as regulating businesses and how they treat businesses through taxation and other regulations?
Well, you just hit the one right on the head. I have hated the income tax since I was 16 and got my first real paycheck. Because if you make $100 and you look at your check and you got 80, you think, where'd the other $20 go? Hello, welcome to America. And I think the state income tax has been a problem for Oklahoma for a long, long time. There's a lot of ways to raise money. The income tax is great for government because it's easy to get the money. But I think people having their money first and having it longer, I'm not looking to cut taxes. I just think there's better ways to fund government than the income tax, even if it's the same number of dollars we're currently giving government. Because what I know is I spend my money better than the government spends my money, and I think most people do. And so I would say the income tax is the first thing. Again, the reason I wanted to be governor is I think it's been a long time since we've had somebody, and Mick, frankly, you're about one of the best I've seen, somebody who can really speak in layman's terms about what it means to govern, so that people want to follow, so that people want to take advantage of the opportunities. We've been talking about bringing sports to Oklahoma City for a long time. Ironically, guess what? A TV guy, a sportscaster, is the guy who really can sell the bill to not only the people in Oklahoma, but the people who are thinking about bringing the team here. Communication skills are what Oklahoma has lacked for a long time in telling the rest of America what's great about Oklahoma and Oklahoma City. And with the lowest price housing, the lowest price office space, great weather, hardworking people, we should be booming. And the fact that we've had to follow so many other cities and states for so long, I think, is a consequence of not having the kind of communication skills we need.
Consumption tax, good idea, bad idea, better idea?
Better than an income tax, certainly, yeah. This way, when you get your money, you save it. As long as you're saving it, it's earning you money, and by the way, it's being loaned to somebody else to buy a house or buy a car, so it's still productive. And then whenever you spend your money, you pay your tax on whatever it is you buy. Much easier, don't need a lawyer, sorry Kent, don't need a CPA, don't have to save your records all year long for April 15th. There's no panic about paying your taxes. Whenever you buy something, you pay your tax. Very simple.
You espoused that in one of at least your second gubernatorial bid.
Both of them.
Okay, I
Failed
missed
on
the
both.
first one, but the second. All right, let's get away from that for just a minute. Look into our crystal ball here and tell us where you see the Meinders School of Business 10 years from now under Vince Orza's deanship, and where do you see Oklahoma City University?
Well, I have to tell you, I think under Tom McDaniel's leadership, Oklahoma City University has enjoyed a great, great renaissance. If you haven't been on our campus lately, you need to come and look at what's happened. We've had $100 million of new investment over the last 12 or 14 months. The generosity of people from the business community, Wanda Bass, a banker, Herman Meinders, a businessman, former Mayor Ron Norick and his family, Tom Love, Love's Country Stores, a host of people who have said, here's how we're going to give back. My job as dean is to go create the next round of Tom Loves and Herman Meinders and Wanda Basses and people like that who go out into the private sector, do well, and then give their money back to the church, to the schools, to the United Way. And we see that all over America. And that's what our School of Business ought to be, a place to create great entrepreneurial skills, corporate leaders who come into a community and say, what can I do to help?
Be an interesting year at the state legislature. Term limits continuing to take effect. A lot of people running for different things. Is this going to be a good year to get something done or a bad year to get something done?
You know, I was never a big fan, and still am not, of term limits. That's what voters are all about. You don't like somebody, throw them out of office. But I think every time you force somebody out of office, you lose all the knowledge that they have. You know, if you need heart surgery, you don't want to go to the guy who just got out of medical school who's brand new at it. You want to go to somebody who's got some experience. And in fact, you'll pay more for experience in the private sector. We've said experience is bad because we think bureaucracy kills government. That's what voters are supposed to change, not government changing itself. So I don't know what to expect this year. We haven't done much as a state in the last couple of years. And I don't have a reason to believe it's going to get much better unless the private sector continues to push and demand change that government doesn't seem to dream up all by itself.
Do you have any lingering political ambitions?
You know, I say you should never say never. I've run twice. I have the unique opportunity of having won a primary as a Republican and a Democrat for governor, and then lost both of the runoffs by about 1%. It's not in the cards for me to be governor, and there's really nothing else I want to do. I don't want to go to Washington. I like living here. So no, I think my way is to try to help people like Mick, make the city better and work from the behind the scenes.
What do you think of the governor's race as it shapes up?
You know, I think short of somebody having a lot of money, $2 or $3 or $4 million, I think the governor gets reelected. It's all about money. And if the governor's there and everybody thinks he's going to be there, well, then they're going to donate to him to make sure he's a friend. So if Iztuk or somebody wants to be in this race, they've got to have $2 million in the bank by the end of this year, or it's all over, because everybody's going to think, oh, Henry could be governor again. I better make him a friend, and they'll donate to him.
Let's go back to your teaching. Distance learning. Teaching a class at OCU Business School and having it transmitted around to 3 or 4 other places in the country. Are you doing any of that, or is that in the future?
We've got about 30 seconds left.
We do some. Obviously, we teach with our people on the ground in China, in Vancouver, Canada. I still think the best way is to be in a classroom this close to a student in our university. This is what it's like, so that we can look at your face and go, you don't understand what I'm saying, do you? Versus being in a room with 300. So that's our strength. But yeah, we do it a few places around the world.
Vince Orza, our guest, one of Oklahoma's impact players, can talk on a lot of subjects. And Vince, we appreciate you coming by and being on The Verdict.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you, Vince.
Kit and I'll have a final word when we get back. Great job.
Thank you, buddy.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
The Cox Channel. More sports. More fans. more cheerleaders. More fun. Nobody does more local sports, and nobody does it better.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We just spent a very intriguing half hour with Vince Orza.
Yes, he is an intriguing guy. He's a fellow that stays after it, has enormous tenacity, has good ideas, follows through on them, and make them productive both for himself and for the community. He is indeed an Oklahoma Impact player and has made a terrific impact up to this point, and I'm sure his impact is not finished.
And you have me now wanting to get his book and read it, saying just judging by the title.
Yes, well, it is a fascinating book for what I have read of it, but we'll finish it up between now and the next show, I promise you. You can ask me.
Okay.
I'll tell you. Speaking of the next show, let's talk about that. We're going to do a show now. Of course, we are on both in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and we had a show recently about Leadership Oklahoma City. The next show, we're going to have Wendy Thomas join us with some others and discuss Leadership Tulsa. We're going to be talking about the leadership programs that are present in the Tulsa community and who's involved with them and what they try to do, and I think we'll find it interesting to learn about it. I know that our viewers will find it interesting both in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa.
Absolutely. I was in Tulsa recently and went by and looked at the construction on the new arena that's downtown. This is really going to be special that they're building right in the middle of downtown, and it's going to change the landscape in downtown Tulsa, and who knows what fruits that's going to bring into that community. It's just the start of all the capital improvements that they're making up there.
Yes, well, they've gone over some bumps that have been difficult for them, I know, but it seems to me that all the indicators are positive and up for Tulsa.
So that's next week's show. If you've got an idea for a show, here's what you need to do. Go to our website, theverdict.tv, log on and tell us what you'd like to see on a future episode of The Verdict. For Mick Cornett, or actually for Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.